first I think I just need us all as Christians to just relax. Just relax. Just be.
It's interesting. I'm a hiker. And anytime you are on the mountain, you feel the presence of God. And I argue more than judge.
Hi guys, welcome to the ReImagining podcast. Our first ever episode. My name is Agnes Olo and my co-hosts are
Vic Munala
and Nash.
Thank you so much for joining us on our first episode. We are going to talk about and explore this idea of faith. And to start us off is a quote by Ron Rolheiser on faith that says, "Faith is not a question of basking in the certainty that there is a God and that God is taking care of us. Many of us are never granted this kind of assurance. Certitude is not the real substance of faith. Faith is a way of seeing things."
I think the thing that stands out for me is it's almost like the interplay of like basking in the certainty, you know. So just know about like the holding of certainty is like the hold. It feels like it's a holding of that certainty over others. You know what I mean? It's not just like let me show you I'm better than you kind of a thing because I have this faith kind of a thing.
It's not that I know, it's that I know and you
don't
do you know?
Exactly. And you need to join me over so that we both know and we both can bask in this sort of certainty, you know. And I guess to like that degree, yeah, it's true. Like faith sometimes is expressed that way, but I don't think that any one person gets won over by that basking, you know.
In our certainty.
In our certainty that now it's even basking in the certainty that there is a God and that God is taking care of, you know. It's like the substance even of like what we are basking about, you know. It's like, oh no, me I know there's a God and that God is taking care of me, you know. It's almost like in a real sense, the thing in my mind is like almost sounds like two children in the playground bragging about their different parents, you know. Like, you don't have a father at home? Oh no, our father is there. Like yesterday he came with bread and you know what I mean? So it's like that cannot be the equivalent of faith.
Yeah.
You know, this one child basking over.
It does feel like that though, right?
A lot of times, yeah. Unfortunately. Not fortunately.
I think my reaction is, what do you mean, Ron? Isn't God supposed to take care of us? Isn't that his entire job description?
Yeah.
You had one job.
Primarily, you are supposed to take care of your people, this creation that you created and put into this world. So now I'm forced to question, where is Ron coming from? Or what is my previous understanding that makes me question where Ron is coming from, in order to say, to allude that God isn't taking care of us.
Yeah.
Is he or is he not?
Yeah. But also,
is he taking care of us or is he not taking care of us?
Yeah.
But also, this presumes that the understanding that God's primary job is to take care of us, and us specifically who believe, like not
everyone.
Also not everyone.
Yeah.
The rest of those other people, no.
They need to know the God.
They need to figure their lives out. Get your life together. It's also that God takes care of us in particular, and so then my faith, when I have evidence of God taking care of me, can then be used to justify why that other person, of course you would suffer. What?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, this idea that many of us are never granted this kind of assurance, and it's true because like when you are basking in this certainty, it also assumes that you enjoy certain privilege. You know what I mean? Because then, like literally, if you are in the areas affected by drought, and you literally don't know where the meal is going to come in the evening, inherently there's no basking in the certitude that, oh, there is God and God is taking care of us. You know what I mean? More before your faith at that point is expressing itself with like dramatic questions like, where are you, God?
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's not the same as denying. So I guess the people who get to brag around and bask in certitude is also either people who are avoiding their own suffering or don't know how to process it, you know? Because then it's almost like suffering and joy sort of always. But more importantly, it's like I don't think that we imagine when we are basking in our certitude, I don't think that we imagine other people would, of course, question that basking in certitude. You know, of course, God is there. God is good. God is taking care of us. You know? But then it's like, who is saying that? Like someone struggling with terminal cancer, you know, they might end to that same spot that God is there and that God is taking care of me from a very different perspective than a basking position. You know,
they're not basking.
They're not basking. This is like it's almost like on a day-to-day basis. Now I am like very sure God is taking care of me. Now I'm not sure. Which then like leads to what Lord Hazer says that faith is like sort of a way of seeing. You know, it's like, I don't know, right? I don't know. The last time you're just out there bragging that you can see. You know what I mean? Like, oh, look at me see. You know what I mean? When it's a way of seeing, it just becomes the portal through which you see. And that's a very healthy re-understanding and reimagining of faith. Not as like the bedrock of certitudes from where then you bask out with certainty, but more becomes like a way of seeing that both inculcates joy and humility in all sorts of ways, you know, because I almost feel like in my personal life, it's almost like today I'm very clear that, yeah, sure, there is a God and God is taking care of me and my family. And then literally could even be the same day and I'm like, but God, like, where are you? You know what I mean? Like, God being there and not there, it's like, what? And almost I have to constantly keep doing the work of seeing this God actually at work and taking care of us, you know. I think.
So if faith then is not certitude or certainty about this God doing these things, whatever it is where you are, I guess it also informs how you interpret God. Then what then is it? What then is faith? And how might we begin to reimagine what this faith is, or what have you come to understand faith as?
I think a best beginning point, not really best, but a beginning point would be
the best one among all the ones that are there.
Among all the ones, which is also a problem with faith.
It's a
We all think we have the best one.
Yes.
It's almost a competition between the different kinds of faith.
Yeah.
Therefore, you need to be in the best one. But anyway, a beginning point would be really to take a step back and interrogate the stories we've inherited about faith and our introduction to the different things, the different conversations around faith that we've had. I think for me it has never been overtly expressed. Like no one sat me down and told me, young man, this is now faith. You need to know this. So in a sense, I don't have the baggage of the word per se, but I remember faith being doing things at a really young age, and this doing things involved waking up on a Sunday and heading to church because that's what we did, that's what everyone did. But then now growing up and just looking back at that whole conversation and how in different ways it has been communicated, faith has been this tangible thing. It has been communicated as a tangible thing that you need to have, either like a phone or wallet, and in case you forget it, you are like in trouble because you need to walk around and show that you have faith. This is the faith I've carried around here with. So I don't know how faith can be seen elsewhere apart from this tangible thing, because now the tangibility is what Ron is talking about as certitude.
Yeah.
So that I have it.
Yes, I have it, and I need to show it.
Yes. But, and also, I guess it's just important, like early on, to say like what law isn't saying. Like it's not like questioning whether there is a God and whether the God is taking care of us. It's like he's almost like challenging us to the way in which we carry that with such finite certitude. You know what I mean? So almost like this conclusion set dusted, like we don't even poke any questions on that. It's almost like saying, no, is there a way we can come with a little bit more humility to that, And I think that correlates to how I was introduced to faith. I mean, there was like the going to church season, and then there was, of course, the touring churches with the crusades and altar calls and everything else. And literally, if anyone was come across the people, it's like literally faith is communicated. It's literally like this incredibly beautiful trade-off between where you are now and, more importantly, where you get to especially spend eternity in heaven, with your name written in the book of God, in the book of life by God Himself, as it were. And so saying this sinner's prayer becomes very, very essential, But if you to process that, like at least the way it was introduced to me, at least the way I carried it was, you start off being very, like, faith is being sure of where you're going to spend your eternity, and almost then that then informs how you live your day-to-day life. And now how you live your day-to-day life becomes behaving in a way that it does not jeopardize that future reality. So then you have this interplay between my future is very secure and very, very short and very very clear of where I'm going to spend it, and then therefore how I'm living today. It's just a way of like showing and ensuring that I'm moving towards that direction. So faith is that thing, and then to have unwavering faith was so important, because like then you do not doubt, which is another episode that is coming up. Then you do not doubt, whether God is good or taking care of you. After all, like what more can God do that assuring you that you're going to spend eternity with Him? So even if you're suffering, it's for a little while. The goal is to be sure of where do you go after this life, after the here and now, That was my nice introduction.
Yeah, that was like a very, I feel, I don't know if this is a generational gaps. Like, that was
a very... calling me old? That was the thing that was happening in my generation.
Common understanding when I guess, I was too young to like, figure that out. It's just like, people go to heaven and hell. Okay, I'll say the sinner's prayer, but I'm like 5. I'm like, what is that? I wonder whether, like, with that particular understanding of what faith is, the starting point being where you spend eternity, what then happened if at any point the thing, so you started here. Yeah, you've started at the end. Now you're working backwards and then now working back towards the goal. What happens in the middle here if
God doesn't do
whatever, anything happens to you or your faith, or do you change your destination? Now you know where you're going. Oh, how?
You do not. Like God does not have a rubber to rub off your name.
Oh, He can't rub my name.
But more importantly, then because you are sure, like
permanent.
So it's this idea that if God can do sort of like this big thing, like ensure of where you're going to spend your eternity, then literally God shifts here and now to be a way of taking care of you.
So that you don't end up.
So like you, so now I think like generally like faith now, like if you to say, okay, the future is sorted. So now we are dealing with how do we live day to day, I think that relationship between God and me is like on my end, it becomes about making sure that I still remain in God's good books in a lot of sense. Which includes fighting the devil and then avoiding sin and all those things, and generational curses and all those things. And then on the other hand, for God then becomes because you're going to take care of me in the future, like almost like that taking care of me in the future, starts off here and now. Right? So then God also becomes the work of God also to ensure that He's blessing me here and now. But the blessing of here and now only comes in height, almost like on the backdrop of the future. An assured destination, so that now, like it's written now still God that starts blessing me in accordance with that eternity that you're going to spend together. Which is where then you end up with prosperity gospel sort of thing. So then faith becomes this. Now I think this is where my introduction to faith and Vic's introduction to faith merge, because then faith now becomes a thing you need to have to continue ensuring God's blessing in your life. So it's like one of those things.
I think part of the problem with that understanding of faith leading us to a particular destination, the understanding is that that destination is sometime else, someplace else. It's not here and now. And in that sense, we lose this moment. We lose this moment that we have right now. So we spend all our lives, all our energies, all our fundraising capabilities to prepare people for a future, a place that we do not know. Yet we have very specific things that we can do with our energies in this place, right here, right now.
Only that in our understanding of faith, like where you spend your eternity is like the, what I mean? Like, so I completely agree with you that it ends up invalidating here and now. But in our understanding, it shouldn't invalidate the here and now, because then the totality of your life, once you get an assurance of where you're going to spend eternity, then the totality of your life here and now becomes helping others come to the same conclusion. That's what I mean. So like your life gets its meaning in telling and helping others also make the same decision that ensures that all of us spend eternity together. Right? So then the other richness of the here and now, becomes seen either as a convenience or a doorway or a tool or whatever. But more importantly, it doesn't matter as much. Like God has only kept you alive so that you can share faith with your neighbors. But even like so that you can share faith with your neighbors, inherently has that thing for, so that you can also onboard them on this destination-oriented way of life, And then they do that exact thing with their other neighbors, and then in particular understanding of Christian faith, if all of us Christians do that, then onboard all our neighbors onto this destination-oriented thing, oh my God, then Jesus comes back. So who are you to say that doesn't count for a full life?
It's a full life.
So what then happens in situations where these people that we are supposed to onboard,
they're not body.
Like don't worry, but also like it ends up being like, but now that's a responsibility.
That's
yours is to say
exactly.
What they do with that is
make sure that they hear.
They need to hear,
and you give them the choice. Of life and death.
I think for me the problem with that, with all of that, all that we are talking about, is always that it assumes that this Christ is so finite that no one outside of our particular understanding of him has access. It's like, the reason I need to tell you is because of course you don't know. Of course he has. How could Jesus reach you if not through me, because I'm his hands and feet, right? And there's ways in which I guess that could be legitimate, but largely, when we are coming from a space where I'm the one who knows and you do not know, then inevitably we have created an other. And because there's an other, of course, we are here where we are at right now, where faith is like a battle, and everyone is trying to fight and justify their faith and why they are right and why anyone else, because there's an other to fight. As opposed to faith becoming this thing that is so mysterious and infinite that, of course, it's gonna find that person. Of course, I don't know. I'm not the one doing the saving work. I could even go out and evangelize, whatever. But that is not what saves anyone. That is not what brings faith to anyone. It's that this thing, this faith journey, this thing that we are understanding as faith, for me, it's been so helpful to start to understand it as overall, including all, with all, in like everyone. Jesus Christ, the universal Christ, will reach everyone. He will. Like, yeah.
At which point now I feel the need to like tell you as a pastor, like, okay.
Will he?
Okay. It's a Christian podcast.
It is.
But
Yeah.
But I hear you, and I think the other challenge, I think, even when there may be like traces of importance of that, you know what I mean, like of people who find the life in Christ because other people communicated that to them, you know. I think additionally to Agi's idea of scarcity mentality with Christ, it's also the idea that it's generally, I think the biggest challenge is also the reduction of everything that Christ came to do and be in our world to literally this future destination, which, like you said, invalidates the here and now in all its richness and complexity and all that kind of a thing, which then like leads me to like wrestle with, to grapple with like maybe how Jesus would have understood faith, which I guess I'm speaking for Jesus, check me out. It's more like to say like Jesus comes and says, oh no, he's like unleashing a new kingdom, like a new way of being that connects heaven and earth here and now.
Yeah.
Like if you process it, when Jesus says, even in the Lord's Prayer, may your kingdom come here on earth, not your will be done here and now in this world, not in some future other place. You know what I mean? So like then you get into this tension between Jesus' sort of understanding of the kingdom of faith and the kingdom in a way that he embodied it and spoke and taught about it, and how we then ended up interpreting what that looks like and means. You know. So then I could be extremely, that's not ideal. I'm not saying that that's ideal, but almost like my ethics don't matter to the degree that I get to still share the gospel with Agi. So to the degree that Agi's future eternity is also saved. You know what I mean? And you go back to it, even start with the gospel, you know. And Jesus seems to be a very much here and now kind of a guy, you know. And still, and it's true. At the end of that, he tells the disciples to go out there, making disciples, baptizing people in the name. It's fascinating that then the making of disciples ended up being equated with making of converts. Because I generally think there are two different sort of ways, you know, because anyone who have tried to make a disciple, like, or anyone who has tried to be a teacher to someone, which is what making a disciple is, you realize how non-linear and how it can't fit into a pamphlet, and you can't fit, you know what I mean? So I guess that for me, that's like the big tension with the way we have understood this particular kind of a faith, you know. So,
considering all this, and I have to bring this up, years ago, a bunch of people were white people. A bunch of white people organized
the white of them.
The white of the people.
The whitest of the people.
Yeah.
Organized resources came to this land that is Africa in the name of bringing the gospel.
Amongst other places that were going.
Yes, amongst other places that were going. Which in a sense was bringing their faith.
Yeah.
And when years later we all know how that turned out. Part of the thing they did was alienate us from our ways of worship that we already had as Africans, as people. You know, we went to the mountains to pray on the mountains, and it's interesting. I'm a hiker, and anytime you are on a mountain, you feel the presence of God, and I'll argue more than church.
I'm like the pastor. Which church have you been going?
Oh my God! You need to check churches.
Yeah, so these people organized because of, you know, what whatever faith tradition they had been introduced to, they saw it fit that let's go there and remove everything about how they believe, how they practice faith, and let them give them ours. And that has had consequences that we are still dealing with today. Now, but a couple of years ago, which I think this story is really interesting, I met a missionary, still white.
Whitest.
But he had an interesting way of doing this same thing that we are trying to do. He went into places and asked, how do you worship God here? And sat with that community for as long as he could, and learn from that experience that, like, okay, it has been good, I've learned something about how you worship God, as opposed to, so guys, stop what you are doing. This is how.
Let me tell you about Jesus, JC.
No, and it's one of the but also like way that just didn't end with just introducing this way of faith and arbitrating our way of faith. I mean, it also has almost attached to it the desecration of our resources and the colonizing of people and the enslaving of people.
Political, economical.
Exactly. So I mean, it's this big hegemony, and of course, there's always these big things they are, like, like they are within those people, places where they probably try to do it differently, right? But I think the thing that I thought, like, we were being invited into, not by missionaries, but I think the things that we, like, inherent to our ways of worshiping God. It's like, even say that, like, we as Africans, whatever, but we as Christians also are the people who believe in an omnipresent God, like a God who is everywhere. It's not even innovative to say that these particular people worshipped a God facing a particular mountain, whatever. It was like, of course, God was going to be there. I think what was supposed to be genuinely unique, and the thing that I still hold on to as a Christian faith, it was supposed to also particularize this God in the universe within an individual who showed up as his son, right? So almost like all these expressions, they don't get arbitrated, but they find an expression in the God who became man to show us what it looks like to worship God. So like, of all the cultures, even as we were worshiping God, our God facing mountains in different places, we really struggled with an idea of a personal God, with a God who is for you, who is with you. Exactly, right? And God resided in the mountains and all that kind of a thing, and so we had to mediate and all that. Then comes literally the claim of Christ is that then God becomes one of us, comes and lives amongst us, almost modeling what actually it was like to connect and be in one relationship with God. You know what I mean? When Jesus shows up eventually and says, I'm the vine and you're the branches, that kind of a thing. And when he shows up and says, our Father, So almost like if you were to ask me what would have been the best takeaway from the missionaries, is like to say, like, the God you worship, right? This God has also particularized himself with a particular person. Not to say that what you've been doing is wrong, but actually as a way to free you from worshiping that way, to worshiping a God who is now relatable and personal, and a God that you don't have to perpetually keep sacrificing out to. You know what I mean? Almost like to set people free. And then Paul, writing somewhere, says, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. So then the challenge becomes whether what we got with this particularization of our westernized faith was freedom, or was another version where we now don't worship towards a mountain, but we're still practicing the exact same rituals and dances and understandings of who God is. You know what I mean? So you don't see that the unleashing of the freedom amongst the people, the freedom that comes from knowing that this God is just not out there in the created universe. This God is also literally in you, literally here and now. Like Jesus Christ, like, literally shows that one of the radical things he says is, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no part in me. Therefore, wait. This God is saying that we actually need to take him inside of ourselves. It's like, that's crazy, you know? And that would have been radical and crazy in every single culture of the world. But it was God saying, I am not just I'm not just content being out in the mountains and out there. I'm also content with being at the very seat of your personhood, as it were. You know what I mean? So, there's that.
Yeah. That's
So, bottom line, come to church.
Come to church.
Stop hiking.
That's what we are saying.
Yeah, that's what if you're missing it.
Stop hiking on Saturday. Then Sunday you're too tired. Come to church. No, yeah, but seriously, that's that's a whole Pandora's box. But how then have you particularly found a reframing of this faith, and is it still viable today in 2023, where there's so much questions around whether this thing is even a thing? Like, is this still a thing that people need to be doing? Should we throw it out altogether? What are some ways that you have reimagined faith for yourself? And could you share that?
The question of faith is ultimately about the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we want to believe, the stories we've inherited, and the stories that have formed a big part of who we are, what we want to do in the world, and all of that. And some of these stories, we've had them from a different perspective, so to speak. So, for example, the question of faith with certitude, faith being equated to certitude, has always meant that 1 + 1 = 2. You put in A, you get out B. And in some seasons of our life, that works, and the simplicity of that is really beautiful to see and experience. But then we grow up, we grow old, and life gets more complex. We start experiencing pain, we start experiencing uncertainty, we start experiencing doubt, and all of those things, and they do not fit into the container of the story that we have believed for so long. So probably the starting point for us is shift the story from faith being this certitude thing that 1 + 1 = 2, to being open to maybe sometimes it's 3, maybe sometimes it's 11, and learning in the moment to deal with those moments of disappointment when all you thought is not what comes out at the other end. So just reframing that story in our minds, in our hearts, to say, I'm open to, I can put in the work, but then I might not get the results. The same way a farmer grows crops, and sometimes they don't grow, sometimes they grow.
But we are accepting of that for everything in nature except
faith.
Exactly.
It's just the rain. The rain did come, it's okay. But then for faith, it's like, but God should have showed up.
And so many different thoughts. But one of the primary one is that it's like faith, like almost like baked into faith. Someone used to say that faith is a nonsense, right? It's not one of the 5 senses, the hearing, the touching. Therefore, it's a nonsense. And I think the thing with nonsense is things, it baked within them is trust. You know what I mean? So faith is like a trust venture. And also, the other thing that holds me in my imagination process is someone who said that, like it's easy to think of a people of faith vis-a-vis people who have no faith. But inherently, because we are limited human beings, we are a people in need of trusting someone. So we are a people of faith. It's like all we have been wrestling with here is what it looks like to have faith, say, in Christ, as expressed through the predominant Christian faith. But we could as well done a whole episode talking about faith in money, faith in careers, faith in jobs. Like, you know what I mean? So I guess the challenge, I think for me, one of the reimaginations of faith starts with saying, it's not like you have or don't have faith. It's more like, where are you placing your faith? Is where you're placing your faith leading you to more freedom, more joy, more awesome transformation, or not, in that sense, And I think now talking about placing our faith, one of the really helpful understandings of God, as many as there are understandings of God, is God as the ground of being. You know, like the ground of being, which I guess incorporates Vic's hikes and nature, the particularized Jesus who comes in an embodiment of a man and dies on the cross, right? Like the ground of being, which almost means that for me, faith is like placing my faith in the ground of being, you know, and almost within that ground of being, then I don't know, it has just carries a sort of freedom with it in that sense, you know. And then the last point is that, you know, like faith, the other imagination for me that is helpful is like understanding faith as sort of like the spring from where I spring into life, you know, like from grounding my faith on, say, like the ground of being or on Christ. And then from that place, like it launching me into the world. As compared faith being the thing I am clinging on to as I'm dragging myself through the world, as it were, it becomes like the thing that launches me, you know. And if I start there, then I'm like, I can do so much more with God who is present in everything and everywhere. And I can also do so much with the Christ who shows up and says, I am Emmanuel. I'm like God with you. You know, like I'm not going anywhere. Whether you notice it or don't, I'm like God with you. I am God with humanity, you know. And then if you were to process the idea of faith as something that you place, faith is something that you actually have agency on where you place it, you know, so still have choice. It's like, what would that look like if we all were exploring what it looks like to place our faith in a God who says, I am God with you. Through the mess, through the complexity, I'm God with you, you know. So that's like my imagination.
I like that. And then for me, what's coming up right now is, first I think we just need us all as Christians to just relax. Just relax. Just breathe. Just breathe. It's just a giant exhale, then an inhale, then an exhale again, so that we just, you know, relax a bit. Because I feel like the predominant understanding of faith has caused us to become these people who inhaled and then we never exhaled.
Until we're in heaven. Again.
Oh, we'll exhale when we're in heaven, when we are singing and eating, drinking milk and eating honey. I don't know. But then we've created such a rigid people where life does not have vitality and when we talk about, you know, faith, a faith that moves us and a faith that, you know, is how we live, like it energizes our lives. We are still talking about it from like a thing that then if we lose, then like we are done. It's over. And I'm like, no, I don't think that is what faith is. If it's something you can lose, I don't know if it's exactly faith. But there's this sentence that I read a long time ago that's like really helped shape for me a new understanding of faith, even though it wasn't about faith. It was that there's no one thing that you do that ever becomes all that you are. And that is that I can move in life and make mistakes and, I don't know, live my life. But when my life is looked at, I guess, and when God looks at my life, He sees more than even the sum of everything that I have done, whether that be positive or negative, depending on what positive is and what negative is, or whatever. But that my life is so much more. There's such beauty within me, and there's such, you know, I don't know, there's such expansiveness within me. And that is what this faith makes room for, all of who I am. And so this idea that there's something that I can do today that then guarantees that I'm going to hell, it's not it. It's just, there's no way. There's for me, it's just that the grace of God and the beauty and the expansiveness with which He made creation translates to me as well. And so how we are seeing even the earth trying to fight for itself is how also I am. It's that there's nothing like this faith has survived crazy seasons. This faith has survived wars, and it has survived lynchings, and it has survived martyrs, all of that. It will survive me. It will still be there. It will still be there when I die. So it's not something I'm going to die for. However, it's starting to understand that faith is big. It's big enough. It's big enough to hold me when I feel like I am living up to it, when I don't feel like I'm living up to it, when I lose it, or I feel like I'm losing it, or when I actually feel like I have faith, whatever that thing is that faith is this big thing that is able to hold all of it. Yeah.
It's like wonderful. One of the stories that comes to mind is like Jesus hanging on the cross, right? And you have this thief, right? Which ideally this guy who has lived in sin, actual sin that actually hurts people, and not just like secret sin. Yeah, takes people's sin, right? And like at that moment he says, it's like God, is it Jesus have mercy on me, or whatever he says. But Jesus says, "Well, you'll be with me in paradise," right? Like he gets accepted. And at the same exact time, or like within this same moment, Jesus looks at all these guys who have crucified him on the cross. They wouldn't have qualified themselves as that, right? They are doing this out of their commitment in some very real way to God, right? And yet they are crucifying God. And even for these guys that he has every right to rush out to, looks at them and says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing," right? Like, so in this one moment, like you're finding an expression of what you are saying. That is not one thing. Like even killing God himself, God looks at you and says, "Father, forgive them." Even having lived an entire life, and literally you are dying in the next few seconds, without asking all sorts of forgiveness from the people you have hurt and wounded and everything else. Just a few words, one or two sentences, it's like God is still like, "Therefore, you be with me." You know what I mean? It's almost like God is like, "You get a thing, you get this, you get that, you get that." You know what I mean? And what? Yeah.
Oprah.
Exactly. It's like what? Like what? No.
No,
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
Don't open that banderas.
The real OG.
Yeah. One of the longings that we have as a people of the ReImagining podcast, that with every episode we would not just leave you with this lecturing of ours, but we'll leave you with a blessing, this benediction. And so as we wrap up today, I just want to offer this blessing to you. And that is like, may your eyes be open to all the places and beings that you have placed your faith in all the ways that is shaping your sight. May you wake up to a God who is gracious, a God who is slow to anger, a God who is full of compassion, a God who doesn't condemn you, a God whose kindness is so immense that it leads us to changing all our minds, all of our ways of life. May you place your faith on this God, the ground of being, and allow this God to be the lens through which you see and live. As you do this, may your life be itself an adventure of abundance, grace, and peace. Like the goal is not to keep eliminating doubts. I mean, after all, I would like for people to tell us how successful they are in eliminating doubts.